The first season of the Book of Boba Fett has ended with Chapter 7 in the Name of Honor, and I thought it was okay, pretty much what I expected. It had some very fun action sequences, and I really loved how they wrapped up Boba's journey, which is the most important aspect of the series to me. There was a lot I liked, but as usual I had some criticisms, this time about shifting focus and the scope of the conflict, but let's just move through the story and I'll address everything as it comes up. The story begins in what's left of Garsofwip's sanctuary. After distrusting her for the entire season, I again feel like I owe the character an apology. I saw the plant life in her cantina as evidence that she was rich and potentially hoarding water or something, but I think it was meant to be more a symbol of what Tatooine could become, a place of community, and the Pikes destroyed that. Din returns from Freetown confident that its citizens will join the fight as long as their end goal is to shut down the spice trade on the planet. Fennec pushes back and says that's how Jabba made all his money, but Boba Fett agrees to the terms. He won't profit off a business that hurts the people he is meant to rule. Just because the last guy did it doesn't make it right for him. In that same line of thinking, just because Jabba would have defended Tatooine from the safety of his fortress, Boba Fett chooses to stay and fight in Mos Espa, standing in the ruins of that symbol for Tatooine's potential, fighting with the people, for the people. If he wants to earn their respect, that's not a bad way to do it. On the flip side, we cut to the Pike leader and the mayor of Mos Espa hiding out in Mos Eisley, commanding the fight from the safety of a completely different city, just further illustrating that they don't care about Tatooine for its people, but just as a way to further their own wealth and power. And we get confirmation that the Pikes were indeed responsible for the murder of Boba Fett's Tusken tribe. I guessed that the Pikes had hired Cad Bane for the job, so I was half right, which is more than usual, so I will take that. Next, we stay in Mos Eisley and hop over to Pelly's garage to see Grogu come home. He chose the armor after all. I know I'm going to talk about this a lot more when I do a full review of the first season, but I've got very mixed feelings about this choice. I had a lot of fun watching everything Grogu does in this episode, but it feels like we rushed through some major storytelling beats for The Mandalorian in a completely different series. Grogu's departure at the end of Season 2 felt like a major shift for the story that could have been explored for an entire season, but we're going into Season 3 with everything quickly returned to the status quo. Anyway, back in Mos Espa, Fennec runs through the geography of Boba Fett's tenuous control over the city, and then Cad Bane arrives to draw him out of hiding. Their interactions were great throughout the episode, and I love that they directly referenced their history together. Bane tries to goad Fett into a duel by revealing that the Pikes murdered the Tuskens, and Fennec comes in with some very Jedi advice. She recognizes that Boba's emotions are running high, and that he needs to be calm if he's going to win this fight. Bane also tells Fett that he shot down Cobb Vanth and that Freetown won't be providing backup for the fight, chipping away at any hope of victory, and he says Boba shouldn't have left him without his armor. Not that that was Boba's doing, but the talk of armor is important, and it comes up throughout the rest of the episode. As Cad Bane leaves, attacks begin across the city against the Sanctuary, the Mods, Black Chrysanthemum, and the Gamorreans. Boba and Din use their jetpacks to fly around the city, which is absolutely sick, and then they fight side by side. When one of them goes down, the other steps in to pick up the slack. And we see over and over that Boba Fett's side of the fight, the tribe he has built, is willing to protect each other like armor. One of their own gets hurt and an ally rushes to their side to help. Boba puts himself in harm's way to protect Chrysanthemum. And of course, the people of Freetown eventually arrive to literally shield the defenders of Mos Espa. Even though they're from the next town over, they stand with the people who are willing to fight against anyone that wants to take advantage of their world. And they do so in Cobb Vanth's name, in the name of honor. We do see that there is some slight friction between the people of Freetown and the Mods who stand in for the people of Mos Espa, but even that gets a little arc where they learn to trust each other as citizens of the same planet despite their differences. Sure, Mos Espa is a city and Freetown is in more of the wilderness, but both places are on Tatooine. Let's not split hairs here, you're all in the middle of nowhere. The action of these scenes was entertaining enough, but that 15 minutes or so of runtime was where I really felt like the scope of the fight just seemed small. I know a lot of that comes down to limitations of the volume and live action in general. In the Clone Wars, we got to see these huge scale battles because it's animated clones fighting animated droids. Just copy and paste the armies until they're as big as you want them to be. The battle for Mos Espa seemed like 20 or so people on Fett's side fighting 20 or so Pikes at any given moment. I know that's often the reality of a production like this, but I think different directorial choices could have made the fight seem more impactful. However, those criticisms pretty much fall away when the Rancor shows up. I definitely have some stuff to say about how we met the Rancor in Chapter 3, Boba was told it would take a lot of time and discipline to learn to ride it, and now he's riding it. Even seeing one lesson would have made this a better moment, but I still thought it was pretty awesome. Seeing it jump from building to building, ripping droids apart, throwing pikes around. Sure, there's some stuff I wish I had seen in the build-up, but the payoff was still so much fun to watch. And there's still some really great symbolism going on with the Rancor carrying over from Chapter 3. Back then I said the Rancor and Boba Fett are one and the same. Everyone tends to view them as mindless fighters and killers. That's how the galaxy sees them, that's how most Star Wars fans see them. But just because Boba Fett was born a clone and trained to be a paid killer, and just because Rancors are often trained to fight, that doesn't mean they can't become something more. Boba Fett learning to ride this massive creature is basically the same as him conquering his nature and his upbringing. Everyone stares in awe and fear at this terrifying creature when it first arrives, and then they come to cheer for it when they realize that it's their salvation. But Boba still has something to prove, and that's how we come to Cad Bane. The other bounty hunter represents Boba's past as well, but the past Boba chose for all those years. Yeah, he was raised by Jango to be a killer, he was trained by Bane to be the best killer, but as an adult, Boba still chose that life day after day until he wound up with the Tuskens and saw the value of having a tribe, of actually having someone to watch your back, and not only that, but of being able to watch theirs. He aspired to become the kind of leader the Tusken Chief was, someone who looked out for their entire community instead of only themselves. Cad Bane says he's faster than Boba, but Boba retorts that he has armor. Yes, he literally does have armor, but he also has a community of people fighting with him. He is outdrawn, and Bane gives Boba one final lesson, which is a great callback to those unfinished Clone Wars episodes, but he says Fett can't escape his father's legacy as a killer, and that looking out for anyone but himself is weakness. And how does Fett wind up beating Bane? With his gaffy stick, the very symbol of his acceptance into a tribe and something greater than himself and greater than the life of a bounty hunter. Am I sad to see Bane die? Yes, but I think they did it in a great way. Cad Bane initially wanted to train Boba Fett to be a great hunter strictly so that he could then turn around and kill him to prove that he was better than both of the Fetts. And that's a battle he eventually lost 3 decades later, not to a great bounty hunter, but a great leader. Boba Fett grew and reinvented himself, Cad Bane never did, and he died alone in the sand, just like Jango Fett. But I also think it shows that there is still some darkness in Boba. He's trying to be a better person, but there have still been moments where, yes, Boba Fett is a killer. Those were Bane's last words, and then Fett proved him right, and he had those crazy eyes. Immediately after that, we cut over to the Rancor, which is on the loose, rampaging through the city indiscriminately. Boba lost control of himself a bit, slipped back into the role of a killer, and then we see the animal that represents that side of him wrecking the town he is meant to defend. It's back to being a symbol of fear. Din can't control it, Boba doesn't return to control it, but it's Grogu that calms the beast back down. It's the Force and balance as he's been taught by Luke. It goes to show that reinvention is a struggle. Personal growth doesn't happen overnight. Whatever animal you've got inside of you might get out and cause problems every once in a while, but that doesn't have to be the end of the world. You can put the monster back to sleep, and even the worst parts of yourself, or in this case the worst parts of Boba Fett, can become peaceful again. Meanwhile, we go back to Mos Espa to see that the Pikes are planning on abandoning Tatooine and their co-conspirators. That's the difference between a real community and a false one that's only interested in themselves, because the Pikes and the other crime families did work together, at least until things got difficult, and then the Pikes were happy to retreat, leaving the rest to certain death. But Fennec gets to them all, and it was pretty cool to see her being an actual assassin. Maybe next season we can deal with her own violence and dark tendencies, but in the meantime, that was still a pretty awesome scene. And she has come around to Boba Fett's way of leadership. At the start of the season, she recommended ruling with fear and shock and awe, but now she recognizes that someone has to protect their home. If not them, then who? She and Boba walk the streets as the people rebuild, and he has clearly earned their respect after the defense of Mos Espa. He has successfully reinvented himself from bounty hunter and killer into the leader of a true community. He will watch their backs, and they will watch his. And then Boba Fett's series ends with a scene between Din and Grogu, which was a fun scene, but I do think it's weird. Yeah, I know this is part of the Mandalorian story, and it's leading directly into Season 3 of its sibling series, but I think they could have swapped the order to have Din and Grogu leave Tatooine, and then we could end on Boba and his crew instead. But technically, that's not the final scene either, because we do get a post-credits scene that confirms Cobb Vanth has survived. Thank the Maker, how dare they make me think he was dead that whole time. Honestly, I would have accepted his sacrifice if that's what they went with, but I love the character, and I would love to see more of him. All in all, I think this was a successful finale. I am satisfied with Boba Fett's arc, and that was the most important thing going into this episode for me. I really loved that the entire season explored all of Boba Fett's story, from Attack of the Clones to the Clone Wars to the comics and of course the original trilogy. Some episodes were easily better than others, and I'll admit this series is just kind of weirdly structured, but I will explore all that more in my season review later on. But what did you think of the season finale? Let me know in the comments. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel to keep up with all our Book of Boba Fett coverage, and consider checking out our Patreon page for even more. We released video reactions and audio commentaries for every episode as they came out. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.